The protection of the environment must be made a priority ahead of mining and all other activities.
Kinundina ng ilang grupo ang ginawang pagbawi ni Pangulong Duterte sa moratorium sa pagpasok sa mga bagong mining agreements.
Pwede na ulit pumasok ang gobyerno sa bagong mining agreements. Binawi kasi ng gobyerno ang moratorium na pinirmahan ni dating Pangulong Noynoy Aquino noong 2012.
But they believe that it was the past administration who is responsible.
Definitely, Karen.
Alam niyo po ba ilang taon na? Panahon pa po ba ni Duterte? Ganun po ba hanggang ngayon?
I think 2019.
When Typhoon Tino roared into Cebu with winds of 120 kilometers per hour, it wasn't just nature's wrath that drowned homes, buried villages, and claimed more than 100 lives. It was the culmination of years of policy failures and political hypocrisy that stripped Cebu of its natural defenses long before the rains arrived. The flood that swallowed the province was not merely an act of God. It was the cost of human greed, fueled and legitimized by a government that promised environmental protection but delivered devastation instead.
And this policy is non-negotiable. I sternly am warning all mining operations and contractors to refrain from the unbridled and irresponsible destruction of our watersheds, forests, and aquatic resources.
When Rodrigo Duterte first took office in 2016, he thundered against mining companies, calling them destroyers of the land. For a moment, it looked as though the Philippines would finally rein in the industry that had scarred mountains and poisoned rivers for decades.
So yan ang warning ko. Second is mining. Huwag ninyong ng Gina Lopez by publicity. Hindi siya marunong kasi Gina. She is not an incompetent, she is a bright lady. And she is simply a crusader. Kayong mga minahan dyan, pati yung Marcopan, hanggang ngayon hindi pa ninyo nalinis yung dumi ninyo.
But as the years passed, that promise collapsed under the weight of political convenience and economic desperation. By 2019, Duterte's so-called environmental crusade had flipped entirely. Under pressure from plunging revenues, the pandemic's toll, and soaring global metal prices, his administration began to quietly roll back restrictions.
Ayon sa Executive Order 130 na pinirmahan ni Pangulong Duterte, alinsunod dapat sa umiiral na Philippine Mining Act of 1995 at iba pang regulasyon ang aaprobahang kontrata ng gobyerno.
Suspended mines were allowed to resume. New applications, nearly 300 waiting on approval, were pushed forward. And in April 2021, Duterte signed Executive Order 130, ending a 9-year moratorium on new mining permits. The result was a nationwide surge in extraction. By 2022, the value of metallic mineral production skyrocketed by 32%, reaching $4.24 billion, with nickel, gold, and copper leading the charge. Mining exports hit $18.7 billion, accounting for over 8% of total exports.
The Aliansang Tigil Mina is calling for the end of all mining operations in the Philippines. The DNR, however, says that is not going to happen.
The President has already pronounced that mining operation will continue.
They'll give the mining companies enough elbow room to make room for eventual change, or the modality of getting what's inside the bowels of the earth.
In Cebu, long known for its rich copper deposits in Toledo and limestone reserves across the province, the mining revival was unmistakable. Local operations expanded just as national output spiked, carving deeper wounds into the island's already fragile environment.
Philippine Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr., together with U.S. Embassy officials, visited the artificial white beach in Manila Bay. He was all praises for the project.
This is the greatest project I have ever seen. This will be legacy. I think Simato is a genius to think about this.
But residents in Alcoy, Cebu complain their marine ecosystem was damaged by dolomite mining in the area.
The Duterte administration also presided over one of the worst waves of deforestation in recent history. According to Global Forest Watch, the Philippines lost 1.42 million hectares of forest cover between 2021 and 2022, with the sharpest declines recorded during Duterte's presidency. Despite highly publicized greening programs that planted over 1.7 billion seedlings, there was no net forest gain, because the same government that planted trees was also the one handing out mining and logging permits that tore them down. Cebu's forests were already in crisis even before Duterte. By 2020, only around 29% of natural cover remained, a mere 139,000 hectares. Each year, roughly 89 hectares disappeared, largely due to mining, land conversion, and illegal logging. The mining access roads and open pits in upland areas didn't just scar the mountains. They weakened the soil and disrupted the watersheds that once absorbed rainfall. And when Typhoon Tino came, those denuded slopes became death traps. On November 4th, 2025, Typhoon Tino, international name Kalmaegi, made landfall in the Visayas. Within hours, Cebu's rivers swelled into torrents of brown water, carrying cars, shipping containers, and entire homes through city streets. In places like Liloan and Compostela, flash floods killed families who never stood a chance. Governor Pamela Baricuatro called it the worst flash flood in Cebu's history.
Matanong
I
ko
think,
lang,
Karen, yung Tino is worse than Odette.
in terms of rainfall,
Yes, in terms of rainfall. Kasi yung Odette, malakas yung hangin doon. Itong
Oo.
Tino, grabe, yung flooding talaga.
But experts warned it was not just the storm that made it so deadly. The Butuanon River, choked with silt from years of mining and construction runoff, overflowed faster than it ever had before. The mountains, once covered with trees, could no longer hold back the rain. As one environmental scientist explained, when you mine the mountain, you mine away the people's protection.
Ito eh, kamu di dalam balay na mo da ako pagmanggo di anak. Napisap da anak. Anod pa balay dana silang balay. Anod kuan kuba.
Sorry kay kuya.
Lagi. Ulti ata ako
Pila ka box sa inyo? Nakita na sila kuya, wala.
ang inhan.
Duterte's fanatics, as usual, are blaming the incumbent PBBM administration for the crisis, questioning where the 26 billion pesos worth of flood control projects went. This concern was also raised by Cebu Governor Pam Baricuatro, a statement the DDS quickly exploited to stir instability.
26 billion pesos of flood control funds for Cebu. Yet we are flooded to the max. What did you mean by this? Ipaliwanag nyo bakit po ninyo ito pinost.
You know, you began to ask the question kung bakit grabe yung flash floods dito when we have 26.600 billion for flood control projects. So yun lang naman sa akin. I begin to ask question, bakit ganun? 26.6 plus 600 plus billion yung ano dito, flood control funds. And yet, ito yung nangyayari sa amin.
However, the palace press officer Claire Castro announced the government will investigate the whereabouts of the hundreds of flood control projects implemented during the Duterte administration, a move that further infuriated Duterte's die-hard supporters.
At hindi lamang po sa panahon ni Pangulong Marcos Jr. ng mga flood control projects ang dapat malaman. Dahil lumalabas po kanina yung initial data natin ay 343 flood control projects ang nagawa since 2016 to 2022 sa Cebu. Mula sa 1st District, 2nd District, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th hanggang sa City. So dapat din po itong makita dahil kung meron pong 343 flood control projects noon pa man, dapat po sana ay gumagana ito. So pagtulong-tulungan po natin mahanap ang dapat na papanagot sa mga maanumalyang flood control projects.
Environmental watchdogs like Haribon Foundation and Kalikasan have long warned that the late-term mining surge under Duterte, coupled with unchecked deforestation, would amplify disaster risks. And that's exactly what happened. Typhoon Tino dumped 50 to 100 millimeters of rain within hours, but the damage it caused was magnified by denuded watersheds, clogged rivers, and unstable slopes, all man-made vulnerabilities. National data also shows that deforestation contributes to nearly 20% of greenhouse gas emissions in the Philippines and dramatically worsens flood severity. So while nature provides the storm, it was human negligence, systemic, deliberate, and avoidable, that turned it into a catastrophe. The Duterte government's pro-mining pivot did not just fill state coffers, it emptied communities of safety, homes, and lives. What was once lush forest in Cebu is now a scarred terrain that bleeds every time it rains. And as survivors of Typhoon Tino rebuild from the mud, they're also left to rebuild trust in a government that chose profit over protection. The tragedy of Tino is not an isolated event. It's part of a larger national pattern, a country that keeps letting short-term gain strip away its long-term survival. Typhoon Tino may have been the trigger, but the real disaster was years in the making. Duterte's legacy, once wrapped in populist rhetoric and promises of reform, left behind an environmental debt that future generations will keep paying with their land, their homes, and their lives. The storm did not destroy Cebu. We did.